So hey everybody, my name's Martin. Welcome to my channel. So we got a couple little updates here. In my previous videos I was talking about two issues I was having. Number one was the headlight rattle that is coming from the headlight ring, and the second was the chain. So that was my other issue. So let's start with the headlight. That fix was actually pretty easy. So it's really nothing to taking it apart. There's two screws, like right here and on the other side, and then you just kind of tilt the headlight down. There's a little hook on the top that it latches into the headlight housing, and then you can unplug the actual headlight from the harness. There's like a really big connector there. I'm surprised it's got so many connections, but anyway, so you just disconnect that, take the headlight, and when I was just kind of flicking the ring, I could see that was the noise that I'm hearing on the bike, and it was just really annoying. It was a really loud buzz you could hear with your helmet on. So that really I kind of figured it out by just reaching over while riding, trying to figure out what's causing that rattle. But yeah, it did end up being this headlight ring. So when you got it, the whole assembly out in your hand, you can kind of feel, if you just flick that ring, you can kind of get that noise to reproduce. And so what I did was I had kind of like a pool noodle material, or like insulation for copper pipes, like basically, you know, that like 1/2-inch copper pipe insulation. You could get at the hardware store for probably next to nothing. But what I did was, there's like 4 spots in the corners here of the headlight that you could kind of just stuff that that foam in there and put it all back together, and yeah, that rattle is completely gone. So I just cut like a section down the middle of it, and then just kind of cut it to size and cut it in half actually, and then just stuffed it in there, and that just completely eliminated that noise. So I'm happy about that. I know a lot of other people were talking about RTVing or using some kind of silicone sealant around the ring, and I guess that would kind of attach the headlight to the housing and stop that buzzing, but that seemed a little extreme. And if you ever had to take it apart, because you'd maybe want to access all the wiring is inside there, so I don't think I'd want to do such a permanent fix. And now the second problem was the chain, and what a difference this has made. This has just transformed this bike. I haven't ever had it, and I've basically had it since new. I bought it with 25 kilometers on it, and that chain was noisy from the start. It's almost like a gear whine. Kind of, it was actually coming from the chain. So what I noticed was, you know, every like 200 to 500 kilometers, that chain would just go absolutely slack, and I'd have to adjust it. I was coming like to the point of the end of the adjustment, and so I propped up the side peg so I could spin the rear wheel, and I noticed on the last adjustment that it is actually kind of, the sprocket was wobbling in and out, so it's not really true to the axle. So I was getting tight and loose spots in the chain. I think that might have maybe contributed to wearing it out a little bit earlier, but that stock chain was just junk. It's actually a quality chain. It's a DID chain, a 420 size, but it's non-O-ring or non-sealed. So I guess it just really wore out really prematurely, and I guess a lot of people have that problem. But under this chain cover here, where the front sprocket is, it was just full of metal filings from the chain, and I guess it was just wearing to the point where I was getting an inch of slack every 200 to 500 kilometers. So it was just done. I guess it got to that point where it just kept wearing, and now I got about 56 or about 5,600 kilometers on the bike, and it was just done. So I took it off. But then when I noticed this sprocket wobble, I started looking into that more, and then if you pull this whole drive off, there's actually a cush drive on this bike, but I ended up pulling out the drive, and I unbolted the sprocket from the hub and turned it 180 degrees, put it back on, and now it spins absolutely true. So if you're getting tight and loose spots in your chain, you might want to check just by propping it up and spinning the wheel and just watching that sprocket wobble. And it was quite a lot on this bike. It was about 1/4 inch, or like 3-4 millimeter wobble in and out. So that's why I was getting those tight and loose spots. So this is like a gold chain. I think it's made by Niche. I bought it off Amazon. It's a 420 size X-ring chain, and I know a lot of people were talking about any of these sealed chains probably are going to add just enough resistance to affect your top speed. So this is my first ride with this chain on, and so it is an X-ring chain, and pretty nice actually. It looks good, the gold with the yellow bike. But so I put that on, and with the sprocket now not wobbling like that, I could get proper chain tension everywhere in its rotation. And once I did that, so I'm about, I would say about 150 kilometers so far I've ridden on this, like just today, and I can say the difference is just night and day. The bike feels so silky smooth. It's never felt this nice. And I did a couple like top speed tests. I don't notice any difference in top speed. Actually, it kind of feels a lot smoother, and even a little bit more, you know, cruising power at about 85 kilometers per hour indicated, which would be, I guess, true 80 kilometers per hour. I'm just over half throttle. So before I was pretty much full throttle all the time. I don't know if that old chain was just so rusty and just worn out that maybe it even had a lot more resistance than an O-ring chain, you know, a new O-ring chain. But whatever, it's extremely smooth. Really glad I went with the X-ring chain instead of going with just a non-sealed chain, because it just probably, you know, a couple rides in the rain, it'll just start rusting and stuff, and then, you know, they just wear out to the point where, you know, not even, this chain was pretty much done at about 3,000 kilometers. So I mean, at that point it was stretching to like every ride. It actually came off on me once, and there's a little guard here, and actually got stuck in the middle. During a ride it actually came off, and I noticed the noise, but I just put it on by hand, and it was just draped down. Like, it must have lost, you know. And that was a pretty big ride that day, but like a 250, 300 kilometer ride, and I got like over an inch additional slack to the inch that it calls for. I believe it calls for like 1 3/8 inch free play, or about 35 millimeters free play when you measure it from the center of the chain. So yeah, that was it was getting to the point where it's just stretching. I couldn't even ride it anymore, and the noise was horrendous from it. But definitely, I don't know how long this chain is going to last, but it is a massive improvement in just the way the bike rides. It's extremely smooth now. I don't think I've ever had it this quiet and just silky smooth. And I noticed with the old chain, it almost sounded like gear whine, but it was actually coming from the chain, because now there's like zero noise. So just something to note. And also maybe check your sprocket if you're having a really excessive chain wear issue. If your sprocket isn't true to the axle, I don't know why, but just unbolting these 4 bolts on the hub, turning it 180 degrees, bolting it back on, it's just perfect. And it is kind of machined into the hub so that it sits on these little bosses to kind of center it on the hub, but I guess it's off center or whatever. But at least now it's absolutely true. And the chain was like completely done, but the sprockets look absolutely brand new. Like, you can even see the machining marks on it. So there's zero wear on the sprockets, but chain completely done. So I have no reservations of recommending an X-ring chain like this, because there's the O-ring and X-ring, and apparently the X-ring has a little bit less profile and a little bit less resistance than the O-ring. So I guess it's a good compromise if you want a sealed chain. And when you're dealing with 9 horsepower, that extra resistance could possibly, you know, lose a couple kilometers or miles on your top speed. But I'm gonna now let's try a little bit of a speed test, and let's see. In my last video, my top speed was about 97 kilometers per hour, and today I've hit 105. It's all condition based, like depending on the wind and elevation, and if you're going uphill, downhill, or if the stars aren't aligned right. You definitely you know, condition is everything on this bike, because it's just so marginally powered. You're probably going to come out, you know, like in the wind could take 5 to 10 kilometers per hour off your top speed. So Let's switch to a little bit of a speed test and ride test of how quiet this bike is now. Okay guys, let's try a little bit of a speed test here. So I'm full throttle right now, just in 4th gear, shifting into 5th at about 85. So I'm noticing basically the same top speed as the old chain, even though this is an O-ring chain. We're going 92 here. If I took down a little bit, 96, 97, 98. So I've actually hit 105 today. Again, those are all based off of conditions like going downhill. And right now we're going down a slight incline. So 101, 102. So there you have it. The X-ring chain seems to be giving me the same top speed. I haven't lost any top speed or no noticeable performance at all from what I've noticed putting this chain on. So it's probably a good compromise between an O-ring chain and a non-sealed chain. This would just be X-ring chain, so it should have a little bit less resistance than an O-ring chain. But very happy with it. The bike has never been this smooth, that's for sure. So kind of changed the bike without this headlight ring rattle and this chain noise and hum and all those issues that I was having. It kind of made the bike feel kind of ratty. Now it just feels really smooth, so really happy with that. I think the next thing I want to look at is this shifter. I can see all these joints on the shifter. There's like all these bell crank and little Heim joints that connect the shifter linkage to the shift pedal, and I want to have a look at why that's so sloppy. It is getting worse and worse as I put the mileage on the bike, but that should be probably an easy fix. And I know a lot of people were putting like a direct shifter on it, but I wonder why Honda went through all the trouble of putting an actual linkage and bell cranks for the shifter if they could have just put a direct shifter. There's got to be a reason, and I'm not sure if it could be that having a shifter directly attached to the shift rod, if that would be too much pressure, because I also see that they sell some kind of bearing support systems that bolt to the engine case, and then you have like a bearing supporting that shift rod right at the case. So there might be something to it, because I don't see why Honda would waste their money and time putting a linkage. So I want to do a little bit more research. I don't know if you guys have any insight into that. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments. If you know, if you guys have switched over or fixed this linkage in any way, but I'd be interested in hearing from you about that. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Once again, my name's Martin. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.